Hi everybody and welcome to Mad Knitting. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am on Ravelry as madtownmama and Instagram is madtown_mama. Got that backwards. And today is July the 22nd, the year 2023. This is episode 43. I'm here to talk about knitting and the stuff that I am making and maybe other things that are on my mind that I feel like chatting about. So here we are. I last did a video earlier this month, probably about 3 weeks ago. I have found it a little bit challenging to do content every other week, which was my plan for a while. Summer has just kind of turned out to be a little bananas. You know, the kids aren't in school. I've had different music gigs and work has really been busy. I thought things were supposed to slow down in the summer, but for what I'm doing, that has not been the case. So doing my best here. I show up when I can. I do this for fun, not profit. So I'm here when I can be. Today is Saturday and I have a rare sliver of time to myself in the house. So I thought I would sit down and talk to you all for a little bit about what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay, let's just, you know, I'm hesitating because sometimes if there's something just at the top of my mind about current events or something, I'll talk about that. But I think there's just too much. It's all just kind of mind-blowing. So, I think I'm just going to move on into the crafting space because that's how I keep myself grounded. I have been feeling under some stress and kind of agitated lately, and if I did not have knitting to kind of bring me back into myself, I think I'd be having a lot harder time. I'm going to start by telling you about what I'm wearing. I made this last summer. It's called Heart of Glass from Marianarella, also known as Lyrical Knits. I made the sleeveless version, obviously, but she has instructions for sleeves. The interesting feature here is that there's this lace at the bottom, which is really lovely. I think it's also at the bottom of the sleeves if you do the sleeves. The lace was not especially fun to execute, as I recall, but worth it because it looks so nice. I used a 100% hemp yarn that I'd had sitting in my stash for a long time. And to get the sport weight gauge, to get 6 stitches to the inch, I had to go down to a size 2 needle, which was, for me, felt really bizarre, but it was surprisingly comfortable to knit. I had assumed that the hemp, because it's kind of ropey, you know, it's a plant fiber that's not elastic, I had assumed that it would be hard on my hands, but it actually was not, even with those small needles. So it was a pleasure to knit. The instructions are excellent. I am thrilled with how it fits and how it feels. It's very cool to the touch. I will say that the fabric created with this yarn at this gauge is a little bit see-through. Like, I just have a sports bra underneath this. I should probably wear a tank top if I was to go underneath, if I was to go out in public. And I know I am putting this video out there in the internet for all to see, but I figure this is good enough and I'm comfortable. So we're gonna go with that. Yeah, I really love this and I would like to make more summer tops, but I'm not working on any at the moment, unfortunately. I have one finished object to show you. It's actually a pair of things, a pair of bears. I've been working on these for a long time. It's been kind of a pick up and put down project because it's not, knitting toys is not a portable thing, even though there's not a lot of knitting. You have to pay pretty close attention to the instructions and you have to deal with stuffing and, you know, picking up stitches and all this. So I really want to give these to my nieces when I see them next weekend. We have a family reunion coming up, so I'll be traveling a bit. And I really want to give them these bears. So I was motivated to finish them and I finally did last weekend. So I think they are just as cute as can be. I kind of can't get over it. Details. The pattern is called Good Bear. It's by Susan B. Anderson, who is another Susan who lives in Madison, which is pretty cool. She has many, many wonderful toy patterns that are very popular. So if you've looked for toy patterns, or, you know, browse Ravelry on any kind of regular basis, you've probably come across hers before. Her patterns are extremely well written and clear. Toys can be a little bit fiddly, but the way she does her instructions, it's as easy as it can possibly be. I'm gonna undress this bear just so you can see what he looks like naked, bare naked. The details are just so great. He's got a little tail. He or she, I don't know. I don't know about the genders of these bears. Obviously you don't. Yeah, anyway. This bear has a little tail. It's got little ears. It has a little face. Her instructions call for safety eyes, which I do not have. So I just embroidered them in. Because I used a dark brown yarn for the body of the bear, I don't know that the eye itself is showing up particularly well. Yeah, I don't think it's really showing up on the camera, but you can see the little nose and the little face. The pattern comes with clothes, which is one of the more charming aspects of it. There are little pants, so I'll put these on while I talk about them. The little pants were very easy to make. I did this teal color for one bear, and for the other bear I chose this sort of dark mauve color. I did the two bears absolutely identical, you know, for the main color and the face and everything, and I just made different clothes for them. Now, one of the options for a sweater is a cardigan or a jacket. So I knit that first, and I think I talked about this before. For some reason, the jacket I made came out just a little snug. Blocking helped a bit. And I thought about re-knitting it with a bigger needle size so that it wouldn't pull quite so tight, but in the end, I decided this is a toy and I'm just kind of ready to be done with this whole project because there's so many parts to it. And there's 3 buttonholes down the front, but I just did 1 button at the top, just because if you try to close it all the way down, it pulls kind of tight. So we're just gonna call this a fashion choice. So there's this mustard colored jacket, these teal pants, and then she gives you a pattern for a little beanie. My one issue with the beanie is that it doesn't like to stay on. I think it's the shape of the bear's head is just not conducive to holding a hat on. So that might get lost. But it's still very cute. So that's one. For the other bear, as you can see, I did different color pants, the same color beanie, and the other option you have for a sweater is this little pullover with a very simple color work design. So for the pullover, the contrast colors, I don't know how well it's showing up, but I used the same sort of dark mauve as for the pants, and this one piece of it in the middle of the chart, I used the same color as the bear, which is what she calls for in the pattern. So this sweater fit perfectly, especially after I blocked it. So I don't know what was up with the other one. The yarn I used for these, for almost everything, is called Reynolds Whiskey. It was discontinued years ago, so you can't find it anymore. But I really like it. It's sport weight, it's very light and airy, so it's really nice for color work. I think it's not Shetland wool, but I think it probably is similar to some of those Shetland wools you see just because of the way it handles. I used just a tiny bit of Cascade 220 Sport for the gray part in the front of their faces, just because I didn't have the right color in the Reynolds Whiskey. And then I actually had some wool embroidery thread that I used for the eyes and noses. What else to say about these? All of the yarn I used was left over from another sweater project I made myself a while ago. So didn't use up all the leftovers, but it felt good to use something that I had just sitting in stash. So these are a pair of bears, a pair of good bears for my nieces. I haven't finished anything else since the last time I recorded. I have a lot of things in progress, including some bigger stuff, some bigger projects. So I'm gonna move on to that now. Let's start with the plain stuff, the plain Jane stuff. I've showed these before, but I've definitely made progress. I have a pair of socks for on the go. I finished the first one. I have markers there so that I can easily count the rounds to make sure I'm making the second one exactly the same size. It's just a plain old vanilla sock. I knit most of this first one during a conference about a month ago. And this is just what I take along when I have stuff going on elsewhere, like out of the house. So the yarn is Republica Unicornia BFL sock. I think the color is Moon Dancer. So it's, I think the base color, like the undyed color for BFL, is sort of a more yellow cream than you see in other, like other breeds or other kinds of wool. But you can see this has a whole bunch of different sort of girly Barbie colors. Maybe I shouldn't say girly, that's very gender specific, but there's like, you know, there's various shades of sort of magenta, fuchsia, there's a little bit of blue here and there. Very bright, very fun for socks. I did an Eye of Partridge heel. This is a 64 stitch sock I use size 1 needles for. Eye of Partridge heel, a little bit of a garter ridge. I do this every time, but I think it's actually showing up on this sock better than some others, so I'm just holding it up for you to see. And yeah, it fits me, so I'll probably keep it. This is as far as I've gotten on the second sock. I am just about ready for the heel. I think I've got a couple rounds to go before I do the heel. And I've been keeping count with markers. What I will do, by the way, on a plain stockinette sock, just so I don't have to count every single round, is about every 20 rounds, I will just stick a marker in near the beginning of the round so that I don't have to count all the way from the cuff. And that seems to work pretty well. I knit a lot of this during an event I had to go to for work. So yeah, I was in the same room kind of watching different speakers for about 2.5 hours. So I cast on the cuff and got pretty far. That's that. It'll probably get finished soon. We have a trip coming up. Like I said, it's kind of a big road trip, family reunion, and then we're gonna keep going so we can spend a few days and do some hiking somewhere else. So there's gonna be a lot of car time. I probably won't do much of the driving since we have 2 other licensed drivers in the family, and my daughter has her permit, so she needs to get some practice in, and I'm happy to sit in the back seat and knit during all of that. Fortunately, I don't get car sick. So I need to think about what I'm gonna take, but I haven't planned that yet, so I don't think I'll really talk about that here. Anyway, I have another small project I haven't gotten too far on, but I started it, so I figured I'd show you. I did talk about wanting to do this last time. So, did I talk about it last time? I know I talked about it before, I don't remember. So I have all of this, gotta find it. Have all of this yarn left over from mittens that I made out of wool we got in Iceland when we were there last summer. And So this is what's left along with the sort of deep rusty orange. And what I want to do is make a hat with a lining, because the wool itself is too scratchy to have right next to your face. But with a lining underneath, it should be quite warm and cozy. So during a long meeting, I brought this along. I am basically making a polka hat, but modifying it for a bit heavier gauge. Because that's written for very fine weight yarn, and this is more of a DK. I think I'm actually getting 5 stitches to the inch on size 5 needles. Which, okay, side note, I'm curious if any of the rest of you have experienced this, but I have found that with long wools, like some of those really hardy breeds, not that I know a whole lot about wool breeds, but this is just what I found in like 2 or 3 other cases, where if I have like 100% Romney, or I don't know the name of this, but it is like Icelandic sheep, you know, something that's kind of scratchy, long staple length, very, very sturdy. I have found that I get bigger stitches on smaller needles than with other kinds of yarn. Like this is DK weight, and I went all the way down to size 5, and I'm getting 5 stitches to the inch, and it's very comfortable. And normally I would expect to get like 6 stitches to the inch on size 5 needles. So anyway, I'm just curious if any of the rest of you have experienced that. Anyway, be that as it may, I did a provisional cast on. This pink is just left over from something else. And I knit till I was done with my meeting in this rusty wool, or this rusty orange color. And I think I'm gonna do kind of wide stripes, just because I don't want to be bothered with changing colors very often. But I haven't totally decided if I'll just go all of one color basically till I run out, then the next color, then the next, and the next, or if I should be a little more careful about measuring how wide each of these stripes are. I have not totally decided yet, but I think it'll look pretty cool with, you know, maybe like this. Maybe the orange, then the charcoal, then the light gray, then the blue at the top. Maybe that's how I'll do it. But regardless, I'm gonna make it long enough so that you can definitely fold up the brim. So I should definitely make this tall so that it doesn't all get covered up, now that I think about it. And what I have found for the lining is, this is a discontinued yarn. I'll show this one hank that's sort of coming loose. It's called Fresco. It's by Classic Elite, which is a company that is like no longer even in business. They dissolved quite a while ago. But it's 60% wool, 30% baby alpaca, 10% Angora. It is lovely and soft. It's a very light sport weight. I, in fact, used it to make mittens for my son that he really likes to wear, but they have pilled like you wouldn't believe. They're so fuzzy, you almost can't see the color work in them. So I'm thinking these are not so great for mittens, just because mittens get a lot of wear and friction and you just can't, it just won't hold up. But in a hat that's not gonna see all that friction, especially if it's on the lining and the inside, it's so beautifully soft that I think it'll work nicely. So yes, this is much lighter weight, which I think is good, because it'll keep the hat from being too thick and bulky. But I have this in a few colors. I have this hank of navy, I have a hank of black that I've already wound up. And I have these little bits left over from my son's mittens. So there's the pale gray, and then this, I don't know what you'd call this, kind of a russet color, I guess. So I'm thinking what I'll do for the lining, because what you do, the polka hat's knit from the middle out. So what you do is, once you have half of it done with the crown and everything, then you unpick the provisional cast on and pick up the stitches for the lining and do the other half. So I think what I'll do is just start with this gray for the lining, because I think it'll look very nice up against the rust. Knit with this until it runs out, and then pick one of the other colors that I have on hand. That would be on the inside and wouldn't even show. So I might just like go ahead and use up, where did I put it? Everything's falling down. I might just go ahead and use up the rest of that sort of rusty red color and then move on to the navy or the black or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of fun to improvise and kind of decide as I go what I'm doing. Because, you know, this is not a high stakes project. Like, it doesn't matter. I think it'll work out really well no matter what I do. And at the end of it, I'll have a super, super warm hat for the Wisconsin winters we get, which can be pretty cold. So that's one work in progress. And I'm just gonna drop things on the floor because it's off camera and I'll clean it up later. Third work in progress, let me see. I have 3 sweaters going. So let me start with the smallest one. This is one I have started since I last posted a video, but I did talk about wanting to make it. It's called, I'll show you the pattern first. I have made this before. It's called Toque or Tuck, I'm not sure, by Gabrielle Dansknit. I think she's Danish. Not sure. But it's a very simple, well-written pattern. It's a top-down cardigan with a hood in very lightweight yarn. And that's one of the things I like about it, is that it actually knits up at a gauge that is appropriate for sock yarn. I really don't like, for the most part, I really don't like when patterns are written for fingering weight yarn, but then you're supposed to get 6 stitches to the inch and it just feels like it's gonna like stretch out of shape and pill immediately. This is not that. This is tighter than that. So this is another project for the nieces. This is the smaller of the 2. So this is being made for the 5-year-old, which, gosh, I hope it fits. I just don't know anymore. I am making it striped, as you can see. And I have finished the main body. I am just about done with the sleeve. I'm at the point where I need to switch to smaller needles and just do the cuff for about 1 inch. Then I'll do the other sleeve and then obviously the hood. The yarn I'm using is, for the hand-dyed, interesting part, I am using Republica Unicornia again. Can't remember the name of this color. It's just like a merino sock. So I think there's some nylon in it, but it's very soft, very nice to work with, and has so many colors. It's like, I think in real life, it's a little bit more green than is showing up on the camera, but you can see there are all these other colors splashed throughout, including kind of a highlighter, green, there's pink, there's purple. It's seems really appropriate for a vivacious 5-year-old, which is a good way to describe my little niece. So I'm striping it. I'm doing 4 rows or rounds per color. To avoid the jog, which I think is coming out pretty well. There's a little bit of a bulk, but the stripes don't have a jog, so I think it's a good trade-off. What I'm doing is, for in the round, when it's time to change color, you use both yarns for the last stitch of the previous round and the first stitch of the next round when you're changing color. And I think that works out pretty well to hide that jog. When I'm going back and forth, which is the case for the main part of it, what I did was, we don't have to worry about there being a jog when you're going back and forth, but I didn't want a big loop of carried yarn coming down. So I was either, for every 2 rounds, I was either twisting the contrasting yarn, like sort of catching it behind, or I would just knit the first stitch of the row with both yarns. And that way you don't just get a big loop sticking out. The one modification I am making to this pattern, other than striping, is I left off the extra stitches she calls for on the fronts because that's where you do the button bands. If you just use one color yarn, you do these garter stitch bands that as you're knitting the rest of it and just do buttonholes every once in a while. I did not think that would look good with the stripes, especially with yarn carrying in the back. So I left those stitches off, and what I will do when the whole thing is done and I've got the hood and everything, I will take the hand-dyed yarn and I will pick up stitches all the way around, you know, up one side, up around the hood, down the other side, and I will knit those button bands on later. The other time I made this pattern, I did the same thing because, and I think it was before I started this YouTube channel, but I'll throw a picture in here like I did last time. But it was a baby present for someone, for a pair of dads who were expecting their first kid. So it was a gray sweater with rainbow stripes on the main body. And I didn't want the stripes to show up on the button band because I thought that would be awkward. So I did the same thing. I just picked up around, all the way around the front and, you know, the edge of the hood to do the button band later, and it worked out beautifully. They also didn't know if they were gonna have a boy or a girl until after the baby was born. So the rainbow had a lot of meaning there. Yeah. So for the hood, I'm thinking I will not stripe the hood. Partly because, oh, I forgot to say, the plain yarn, this is just Cascade Heritage in, there's no color. There's a color number. It's either undyed or just white, but it's, yeah, just plain old white yarn. So the hand dyed is much more precious, obviously, because there's so much more work that went into this. So I want to use up more of it if possible. So I think I'll do the whole hood in this. I think that will look really cool, like the solid, or, you know, the non-striped hood against the striped body of the cardigan. So I might end up, I don't think I'm gonna do it with one skein. I'll have to break into the second skein. So I might alternate skeins at least until I'm out of this. But we'll see how much is left after the second sleeve. I've gotten quite a bit out of just these two skeins, as you can see. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm gonna do another one just like it in another color from the same dyer. That'll be a bigger size for my older niece, and obviously won't get done by the time I see them in a week, but my goal is to have them done for Christmas presents, and maybe I'll make little dresses to go with them or something, we'll see. Another work in progress I have, the final two are sweaters for me. One of these you've seen before. This is the Porty cardigan. It's by Gudrun Johnston. I don't have a whole lot new to say about this because I'm pretty sure that when I showed you last time, I had finished this top and I was well into the body. I got a lot done on this a few weeks ago when I was participating in a music festival. There's this music festival here that I have done every year for a while. Last couple years I couldn't for various reasons with COVID and travel and stuff, but I came back this year and it was great. And I was at this festival all day, but I had all these chunks of time where I wasn't in rehearsal or whatever. So I got a lot of knitting done during that festival. And then after I was done with that, I kind of put this down and was working on other stuff. But I've made quite a lot of progress on the body. I think as it is now, I need to add a few inches yet before it's a length that I want, but it's coming right along. I'm getting 7 stitches to the inch using Barocco Lanas yarn, which I'll show you in a second. So it's, you know, it's kind of fine weight. It's taking a little while, but it's very, very satisfying to knit. The color work was just so much fun. So I'm going to show you again. Just because when I'm working on this, I will stop every once in a while and just look at it because I like it so much. I like these colors so much. So I'll show you the yarn. The main color is, I think this is called Fog, so it's just a very light heathery gray. Great background for color work. Goes with everything, you know. For the contrasts, I don't know that I have names for all these, but I actually have the skeins, so I'll show you. This one is a deep burgundy. When you look at the color work, it sort of comes across as brown, but it really isn't brown. This is like a really deep, deep maroon. I have this bright sort of tomatoey red. It's also a bit heathered. All of these are heathered, which I like. This looks like the color of robin's eggs to me. Like it's a light blue that leans a bit green or teal. And then a really nice mustard yellow, which is a color like, I don't know how well I can wear this color. My face is really red right now because it's so warm. But I kind of don't care because I like it a lot. I would totally make a sweater out of this and wear it, even if it didn't work for me. So that's what I got. Obviously, there's a lot of this left. We'll see how I use it up. I don't know yet. I don't really mind having a lot of leftover yarn, but I do think sometimes it would be nice if you could get these in like 50 grams or even minis. I mean, it's Barocco. It's just commercial yarn. You know, it's $11 for 100 grams, which I think is, you know, pretty cost effective considering how long one of these babies will last you. But yeah, anyway, Porty cardigan. So hopefully this will be finished soon. Fall will be here before you know it with cooler temps, and I'll actually want to wear it. My last work in progress. I talked about wanting to start this last time too. I think maybe the accountability piece of like saying I'm gonna do something on this channel kind of inspires me to do it. At least it has recently. I know I've in the past talked about other projects that are still just theoretical. But for now this is working. So I have started the Reflections pullover. This is as far as I've gotten. The Reflections pullover is by Mayu KP. It's from this book, which I've talked about a couple of times. It's called Contrasts, Textured Knitting. It's huge. I mean, this spine's like an inch thick, at least. This is published by Lina. Have mixed feelings about Lina, as I've said before. One of the things I don't like is that they don't offer you a download code when you buy this huge book. So I actually just made a photocopy of the pattern so that I could have a reasonable way to carry it around with me and check the charts and stuff. The cable chart, okay, things are just falling. Deep breath. It's been that kind of a week, you all. It's been that kind of a month, actually. Just constant stuff happening. I feel like I'm dropping balls everywhere. I'm not actually dropping the ball, but that's because I'm just always on. Anyway, the chart, where was I? The chart is really not that complicated. I have it memorized by now. But these cables mirror each other, as you can see, which is, I'm sure, why they call it Reflections. And I was afraid it was coming out just a little bit small, so I put it on a second needle and just sort of pulled it on over my hips, and it seems fine. Plus, I think it'll relax a little bit with blocking, since cables tend to really like pull in and be kind of coiled up and tight before you give it a good soak. Obviously, this is knit bottom up. It's a very basic shape. I mean, I think it's basically drop shoulder and plain stockinette sleeves. Like, it's not a super complicated construction. So this is actually working pretty well for like Zoom meetings. It's big enough I don't like take it along places, but if I'm home, working from home and have a Zoom meeting or a webinar or something, I'll pick this up and work on it. So I've gotten quite a bit of progress. I am using Cascade 220 yarn. I have quite a lot of it, 6 skeins, which is I think more than I'm gonna need. It's this beautiful deep magenta color. I'm not really a pink person, but I do like a good magenta. These dark, bright colors just really appeal to me. This is yarn my mom gave me years ago because she had gotten it for something and changed her mind, and she doesn't like having extra yarn sitting around, so I took it. And now I'm finally knitting it. And that's what I have going on. This along with several other projects I have going qualifies for the Colors of Fall knit along hosted by the Yarniacs podcast. I've talked about that knit along before, but just to summarize, the knit along goes from the June solstice through the September equinox. And the idea is that you knit something using at least one color from the Pantone fashion palettes released for New York and London for both fall and spring. So there's a lot of different options. And then to enter your project, you have to have it started and finished within that time frame and styled somehow, whether you're wearing it, whether it's kind of laid out, whether there's an outfit just sort of laid out, even if you're not wearing it, or if it's not a piece of clothing, you can show it, you know, if it's a pillow or something, you can show it styled. Anyway, you take a picture and you post it in the thread or on Instagram, and that's how you participate. It's really fun. It's really fun to see what people are making, and this is definitely one of the colors in the palette, so I'm having a lot of fun with that. That's all that I am knitting. I have not been sewing lately, but I feel like I need to get back to it because weeks ago I cut out 2 pairs of pajama pants, one for myself and another pair for my daughter, and they've been sitting in a pile, not sewn up. I don't know, when the weather's nice, we're lucky the heat wave hasn't hit us yet. I just want to be outside a lot, or at least where I can see the outside, and the unfinished windowless room of my basement where my sewing stuff is just not that. So that's one reason I haven't been motivated lately to sew. I have been reading though, and I just wanted to share this book quickly. I've been reading some fiction and stuff, which is fun, but I don't have anything interesting to say about it, so I'm gonna let that just be for now. But I did want to share about this book because I picked it up off of a table in the library where they put like bestsellers or, you know, stuff you shouldn't miss. It's entitled How Male Privilege Hurts Women by Kate Mann. She teaches philosophy at Cornell. So she's like heavy thinker, brainy lady. And it's really good. I felt pretty angry the whole time I was reading it, as you might expect. I do recommend this. She's got like endorsements and blurbs from Kimberly Crenshaw, Rebecca Traister. Who else might we have heard of? Imani Perry, Jessica Valenti, you know, major news publications. But each chapter is about a different aspect of life that male privilege shows up in. For example, the entitlement to women's labor. When you think about all of the unpaid and unacknowledged labor borne by women in our society, especially women of color and low-income women, things like domestic labor, childcare, other kinds of caregiving, and how we just expect that to happen with no pay or very little pay. Yeah, that's kind of crappy because that is some of the most essential work of our society and we don't value it economically. She has a chapter about medical care, about consent. There's a lot in there about Brett Kavanaugh, which was enraging. There's a lot in here about how we are expected to just sympathize with men no matter what, and doubt the word of women and doubt the feelings of women and all that. It's just, it's not like a happy read, but it's a very good one and a very important one. I recommend this book. I'm going to take it back to the library today, but stuff in here I'm going to be thinking about for a while. I think one of the most important things about it is that it affirms, you know, a lot of the things that kind of bug me, and it puts language to things that I couldn't always explain or put words to. And I feel like books like this are really important for that, for understanding that there is a way to frame some of these systemic inequalities and the things that we have a hard time articulating. She does that in this book, and I appreciate that. So that's all I have to say today. I will be back hopefully sometime in August, and I'll have more to show you then. Till next time.